Okay, so just getting ready and taking a moment to just settle down. So getting ready to start. So close your eyes if you like. And we'll start with Om 3 times. Om. Om. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviyam Karavavahe Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. Welcome everyone. And so today we're going to be talking a little bit about consciousness a little bit more. So we have spoken about consciousness before, and today we're going to go in a little bit deeper. And so it will involve looking at some of the lectures that we've had beforehand and just summarizing what we remember from them. And also we will look at this concept of what is the absolute reality in this philosophy. And so when I talk about this philosophy, I'm not kind of qualifying what philosophy we're looking at this month, but I will do that in the next lecture, where I will talk about the various philosophies and what we have learned. So it would be easier to do that at the end. Well, not at the end, but after we've kind of known the various theories, and then we can put it easier that way. So we're kind of going a little bit backward, but that would be next month. So today, this is what we're going to do. So before we do that, we will revisit the purpose of life. And so what is the purpose of life, and what is the purpose of what we're all doing? And we have looked at so far is that there are several stages of life in this philosophy. And whatever stage of life we are at, we are living life in accordance with the universal values. So for those of you who understand the word dharma, that's what it is, but essentially it's just in universal values. So these are the values that we all know. As long as we've got a human body, we know what is right and what is wrong. Doesn't mean that we do what is right and what is wrong, but we know, everyone has a sense of what is right and what is wrong. So there are these universal values, and another way to look at it, it is something that you like, something that you like others to do to you, and that you should be doing to others, but maybe we don't do it all the time. But these are things that we wish for ourselves, and the values that we wish that others do to us. So we look at the 4 stages of life. So the first one was being a student, and the Sanskrit term was brahmacharya. And this is where the students learn about these universal values that we are talking about. And in the second stage of life, so this is where people kind of have their own household, whether they are on their own or have got a family. And that is the householder stage, where we kind of are working. And our main purpose here is to provide for others, to provide for ourselves, and to amass wealth enough to live, for us to live. So this is that stage. So basically we're talking anywhere between, let's say, 25 and 50, 60 or something like that. I mean, obviously that changes as the life expectancy changes. And then there comes the stage of, I've just called it retiree here, but the stage of kind of where we taking a little bit of a back seat. So people who have got families, who have got children, they're kind of starting to take a little bit of a back seat, letting the children get on with their lives. And then they start to kind of withdraw a little bit from the day-to-day job of amassing wealth and working and getting things done and all that kind of stuff. And then comes finally the stage where people kind of become a lot more invested in their spirituality, and some people leave home and some people don't, and you don't have to, of course. It's not what this is about, but it is how you live your life, even where you are, even in the city. So I think we can also, another way of looking at this purpose of life, we can see that all of us, we've got certain desires for security and comfort. So we need to have shelter, we need to have food, we need to have things to keep us comfortable. And we all desire that. So basically that's what we need to work for in life and make sure that this is provided. And once this is provided, then we can kind of think of other aims possibly. So the other undisputable purpose of life is to be happy. So nobody will disagree with that. So everyone strives to be happy. Everyone strives to live their life without pain, without sorrow, or minimizing these times. I mean, I think without pain and without sorrow is not possible, but it's to kind of minimize those and to kind of still lead a meaningful and a happy life despite of these things. So we're not purporting to say that, well, we can get rid of sorrow, but that's not the way of the world, that's not the way of life, and this is very much part of life. And then to attain self-realization. So we're going to talk a little bit more about self-realization today. So this is when we actually really know who we are, we discover our true nature. And that is the ultimate purpose of life, whether we like it or not. This is what everybody is achieving, is striving towards, and where we are on that journey is very, very different. And it's not something that we need to compare or it's just something very individual to us. And a lot of us don't even know that we are on this journey, but we just are. Okay, so now moving on to the talks so far. We've looked at, in the first talk, what we looked at was the nature of happiness and spirituality. So what we said is that lasting happiness cannot be obtained from external objects. So we just kind of thought that we want things, and then once we get one thing, then we want another thing, and then another one, and it just goes on and on and on, and we all know about this. And also we kind of in later talks talked about this idea of desires and what it does to the mind. So as we keep wanting happiness within an external object, once we get it, we might just discard that object or whatever it is, and then we strive to get the next one. And then once it's kind of given us the first kick, if you like, of making us temporarily happy, and then it goes, and then we go on to our next pursuit. It could be just, we think of that as the challenges that we want in life. So sometimes we want to do something, a project, and then go on to another one, and then to another one. There's nothing wrong in that, but what we need to realize is that this is not the true happiness, and this is not the lasting happiness. It gives us happiness, it gives us fulfillment, so we should do it. I'm not saying no, but I'm just saying that we should really appreciate the limitation of these objects to provide us with permanent happiness. And then we went on to look at the three bodies. So we kind of looked at the physical body, which and then we looked at the subtle body, and then we looked at the causal body, so that there were different type of bodies, and also we looked at the different koshas. And then we said, actually, I'm not the body, I'm not the prana, I'm not the mind, I'm not the intellect, I'm not the ego, which we looked at, but we are all beyond that. So we do have a body at the moment, but that's not who we are. And I think what we also said is that when you're talking about in English, when we're referring to something that belongs to us, we use the word my. So this is my body, this is my hand, this is my table, this is my computer. So all these are different from us. Okay, so there is I, and then there are my things. And there is that distinction. So whenever we need to refer to something about my mind, my body, then that is obviously something that is distinct from who we really are. And so some things we are quite clear about, right? So we know that we are not our car, for instance. We know that there is a difference between us and the car. Okay, but when it comes to our body, we kind of sometimes feel that it is us. And that's because we interact with the world via our body. And also we have this relationship with the body, which kind of makes it feel like it is ours. And well, it is ours to keep care of at the moment, but it is not us. So when it comes to the body, we kind of have this problem, if you like, where we over-identify with the body, but then we don't over-identify with a car. None of us has ever thought, oh, the car is a bit of me. You might like your car very much, but you don't kind of say, oh, I am my car. But we do that with the body, and that's just the nature of what things are. But then we do know that we are not the body. So the other thing that we looked at is the ability of the mind to create a whole new world. So the mind has got this fantastic ability, and when we dream, what happens in dreams really is that we are creating a whole new world, right? And we talked also about where these things come from. So these come from memories that we see. These are things that we actually experience through our senses, and then we keep it in the memory, and then it comes back in dreams, and then the mind projects these things. So we kind of make things up together, and sometimes we dream funny things, right? Very disjointed things. And then we have like things from one, you know, that we might have experienced in one country, and then bring it all together, and, you know, or in one house, and then seeing things that are a little bit disjointed. And that's the way the memory works, and that is all being done by the mind, right? So I don't know if you've ever kind of dreamt about being chased by a lion or anything, or by an animal or something like that. And so this is just what the mind is projecting. I mean, there's no lion there, obviously, and then when you wake up, you kind of feel, oh, I am actually very safe. So this is what the mind does. So the mind has this fantastic ability to create things, to project things, and we just need to remember that for now. And also we looked at deep sleep, and the reason we kind of analyze deep sleep in a lot of detail is that in deep sleep, the mind is not working. Okay, so when we wake up from deep sleep, what we normally say is, oh, I feel very rested, I feel very good, and I feel great. That's what we say normally if we've been able to have a deep sleep where we don't dream anything. However, you are saying this is, you know that you didn't dream, you know that you were there, and you know that you experienced that thing about not your mind not projecting anything. So in deep sleep, what is happening is the mind and the intellect are not working, and what there is pure awareness there, or pure consciousness. So that's all. This idea of isness, you know, just the word is, and then it's just of being. So things are just happening there, but there is no mind and there is no intellect. So we look at the difference between the mind and the intellect in last month. And then we also kind of looked at building on this same idea. We looked at to say that we're not this body is not mine. And then what we are, we said that we are the Atman, or the consciousness, if you like. We use the word Atman here. And we also say that what Atman is, it is existence, consciousness, and bliss. So this is my true nature. So our true nature is existence. So this is this awareness. And how do we know is because we get glimpses of it, and whatever is happening, we are there to experience it. We know. So this we know that we are this awareness, and that's this consciousness, which in Sanskrit is the Sat. So the Chit is the consciousness where you're aware of it, and then there is Ananda, which is the bliss. So there is one consciousness that is hidden in all things, and it is all pervasive inner self of all beings. So we will look at that in a bit more detail a bit later. But there is just this one awareness that pervades everything, even human beings, even the person you don't like, even the person you love, and even this computer, or even this phone, or even anything, even this table. But then it is quite different, but it is there. So Atma is the true self, the real I, and this is the divinity within us. So this is the true consciousness and the divinity that is all within us all. Whether it is there in people we don't like, it is there in people we absolutely love. There's no denying that. So it is divine because it has this these characteristics of being unborn, uncreated, and infinitely vast. So I'm going to explore this a little bit more in a bit, but I'm just going to talk about the other thing that we looked at was the nature of the self and the relationship with God. So God here is in inverted commas, if you like, and that's because I didn't want to use the word God, because God means too many things to too many of us. So therefore, I use the word Ishvara, which is here at the bottom of the screen. And we, what we mean by Ishvara, it is one who creates, protects, sustains, and the source of all blessings. So I've used one here, and it doesn't mean that it has to be in the form of it's not in the form of a human being. So it's the role of the creator, the protector, and the sustainer as well. So we need to understand these three bits. And because of this creator, if you like, that is, this is why the universe and everything else exists. And when we talk about Ishvara, or also we use the word Brahman for this, we say that the real master is the one who has no master, and the consciousness has got no other, doesn't depend on anybody else, and can exist on its own. We will look at that. So one who does not look up to anybody, and one who's not lorded over by anyone else. And then Ishvara is the efficient cause. So we will look at this again. So basically what we're saying is that Ishvara, or God, is the creator. And without creation, we won't be here. So that's essentially what we are saying. And then we looked at this idea of karma as well, and free will. So what this means is we looked at the law of cause and effect. And it states that, oops, sorry, this has moved a little bit. So every cause has an effect, and every effect becomes the cause of something else. That's what that means there. This has just moved a little bit. So everything that we do, that we get results from it. And the results can be either immediate. So you switch on your computer, the screen comes up. Okay, so that's immediate things. And then sometimes the results of our actions don't come immediately, and they come later. So it might take births, or it might come in a few years' time, in a few moments, in a few weeks, whatever. And then sometimes the results of our actions are visible, so we can see straight away what the results are, or whenever we see them. But then sometimes the results of our actions are invisible, and we don't really know. We don't really know. And also what some of the things that we're experiencing in this life are results of our past actions that we have got no idea. And thank goodness for that. Imagine if you knew everything. that wouldn't work really. So just to understand this thing about, we talked last time about red apples and green apples. So the results of actions can be pleasurable. So actions here can be words, can be thoughts, can be anything, right? So by pleasurable, we mean there are things that give us pleasure, and there are things that we probably want more of. And then things that are not so good, that give us a temporary sorrow, temporary sadness or pain. These are what we call as papa, or what we refer to as the sour apples. And life is made of both. And then sometimes you will see around you, there are people with more red apples in their lives. Things are a bit easier for them. And then some people have more sour apples in their lives, and we don't really know how, and we don't really know why, but it is just a fact. We know roughly it comes from past karma. We know that this is where it is, but exactly how it's got to that point, nobody knows. Okay. And then moving on to the next bit about cause and effect. So now we looked at cause and effect in terms of karma, in terms of the action that we do. And then if we talk about cause and effect in the macrocosm, so in the world, if you like, then we know that the efficient cause is Ishvara, without which nothing else happens. And then there is material cause, which is all the other things that happen. So we looked at that as well. And so we'll talk about this in a few more moments. So now I just want to go into consciousness a little bit more and just really go through these points one by one. So there are basically, consciousness can be explained in different ways. And sometimes we use the word Brahman for consciousness. And we know that Atman, which is related to the individual, is kind of, is also consciousness, is also Brahman. So it's all the same. So there are various ways of defining it, but it's all saying the same thing. They are not in contradiction to another. So the first one says that consciousness is not a part, nor a property, nor a product of the body. So consciousness has got nothing to do with the body. It might be there, but it might be experienced by the body, but it is not the body. It's not a part of the body. And also, sometimes, well, consciousness is not necessarily something that you can prove in a lab, because it's not something visible. It's not something that that weighs anything, or it's not something that can be measured. It's not something that can be put in a test tube or anything like that. It is just there. So it is this invisible, independent entity which pervades the body and makes the body alive. It is the chemistry, it is what this converts the chemistry into biochemistry. So what is there, and then it makes it alive. And then when we are not alive, it is when the body is not alive, then that consciousness has temporarily left that body, that this is what this is. So the invisible, independent consciousness is not limited or circumscribed by or confined to the boundaries of the body. So it's not like my consciousness and your consciousness, my consciousness ends here, but it's not at all like that. So there is no, it's all pervasive. It's got no boundaries. And so the invisible, independent consciousness will continue to survive even after the body medium dies, perishes, or is destroyed, right? So we looked at the body in a lot of detail, and we kind of said the body is called, in Sanskrit is called deha, and what it actually means, that word means fit for that one that perishes, so fit to be burnt, essentially. So it just means that there is this acknowledgement that the body is sorry about that. Sorry, that the body is not here to stay. So we looked at there is the physical the physical body, and then there is the subtle body and the causal body. So these two stay together. When upon death, what we call death, or when the body goes, then the subtle body and the causal body kind of stay together, and that's what goes, and that's what leaves the physical body. So this is actually what happens. This is all that death is. Okay, so I mean, I'm simplifying things, but yeah, but essentially this is what death actually means. So leaving the body, this is what it means. I'm not trivializing it, but this is what this means. And so after death, the surviving consciousness cannot be contacted by us or recognized by us, not because it's not present, but because the medium that we need to interact with that body no longer exists. So therefore we don't really know. So there are, you know, all these, if you like, the causal and the physical body is just there. Sorry, the causal and this subtle body are there, but we can't actually see them and we can't interact with them. And so this kind of just gives an idea of consciousness, and there are very many ways of carrying on explaining about consciousness. So now I'm just going to move on to some other ways of saying the similar things, but in a slightly different way. So in the Bhagavad Gita, which is a scripture, if you like, in this tradition, which I'm going to talk about next month a little bit about. So in this text, they explain the nature of consciousness in these words. And so when I mean this is the Bhagavad Gita is a dialogue principally between Krishna, Lord Krishna, and Arjuna, who is a warrior. And this happens in the battlefield. And when during the battle, Arjuna was going to be on a different side to the rest of his relatives, and essentially because he was such a good warrior, he was kind of almost certain that he was going to be able to kill all of them, or a lot of them, and he was kind of very saddened by the fact that he was fighting and his kith and kin, or his loved ones, were going to die. So this is at that point, Lord Krishna was having this dialogue with him, explaining the nature of consciousness and explaining the nature of death and what consciousness actually is. So this is part of this dialogue that's summarized here. And what he says here is that consciousness is eternal, and the Sanskrit word is nitya, which means that it is not within time, so that it is above time. It is not subject to time. So he says in there that there will not be a time when I will not be here. So he said that in the context of the relatives that were going to die. He said, well, this is what dying really means. It's not there is not a time when they haven't been there, and then there isn't a time that they will not be there. They might not be in they will not be in the same form, in the same body, but they are there all the time. So consciousness, I'm aware of time, and therefore I am beyond time, and time is not conscious of me. Okay, so so time has got nothing to do, is not aware of us, if you like. The second nature of consciousness is it is an independent cause. So we use the word satya, which I'll come back to in a minute, means it is not depending on anything else. So it exists by its own, and its existence depends on nothing else. So how do I know that? My existence is revealed by itself. My nature is awareness, and that's what we really are. So we are independent, and everything else is dependent. I've used the word unreal here, but we will look at that in a few moments. And the third nature of consciousness is that it is all pervasive. So the Sanskrit word is sarvagataha, and it means it's everywhere, and it's not located in a particular place. So you can't lock consciousness in a room, and space is not in consciousness, but the other way around. Okay, so so space is not limited by the size of the house. For instance, if you just want to see this analogy with the house, so when you've put a house, so this is an empty piece of land, let's say, and then you put a house there, and so there is space, and space is not limited by the size of the house. Space will be inside the house, space will be outside the house, space will be just everywhere. And also when we pull down the house, space is still there. Similarly, when we have a body, the body, we experience consciousness there, but then consciousness is not limited or confined by the body, as we looked at before. And now this is also very important about the nature of consciousness cannot be objectified. So if you remember, we did a little bit of English grammar, and we looked at this idea of subject and object. So the subject and the object are not the same thing. And so we cannot really know the Atma in the same way that we know other things, because it is not an object. So it is something that it is that experience, but which, well, it is the subject, not the object. So another way of looking at this is that a mobile phone can take pictures of everything. So you can use your camera of your mobile phone to take pictures, but then you cannot use the mobile phone camera to take a picture of a mobile phone. You will need another camera to take a picture of that mobile phone, right? Similarly, with our eyes, we can see things, but we cannot really see our eyes. Okay, so we can see in a mirror, we can see a reflection, but we really can't see that seeing. We can't really see it. So basically, Atma, or consciousness, the same thing, is the experiencer, not the experienced. Okay, so and that is something really important to realize, is that we cannot objectify the Atma. It's not the same thing as you know, as any other thing that we can possibly objectify. And also, one of the things to think about is that sometimes people kind of try and meditate on the Atma as if it's a thing, and that's not really correct either. So this is just something to bear in mind. And the Sanskrit word for this thing about that one that cannot be objectified is aprameya. And for those who know the Vishnu Sahasranam, you'll know there is a verse number 6, that talks about this, that's got this one that says, I can't remember it right now, but I think it says, Aprameya Rishikesha Padmanabha Amara Prabhu, something like that. Anyway, so that's what it means here, is what the Atma is it cannot be objectified. And what consciousness is not a doer, and consciousness is not an enjoyer either. And so not performing any kind of action. And here, what we need to know here is that the Atma is not reaping any of these red apples or the green apples. So the red apples are what we call the punya, or the things that gives us pleasure, and then the papa is the things that give us sorrow, if you like. And the Atma doesn't do any of that. The Atma doesn't do anything consciousness doesn't do, or it doesn't enjoy anything. It's just there. It's just there as the witness. And also another thing about the consciousness is that it is not undergoing any change or modification, and it is just there. It doesn't perish, hence it is always there. any modifications, so which means, you know, where things change forms, and none of that happens for consciousness. Consciousness is just simply there all the time. And then moving on to the next is I wanted to talk about, sorry, about the nature of reality. So reality and consciousness, the same, well, is related. So basically what we want to say here is what the philosophy says is there is nothing but consciousness. Everything is there temporarily, but everything is consciousness. So reality, also known as satyam or satya, as we saw earlier, is always there. It is permanent, and with it there is this idea of fullness, and that means that it doesn't lack anything. It doesn't lack anything. It doesn't die. It is unborn. It is just always there. And the other thing to understand is that this is where sometimes there are some confusion that occurs. So what I'm saying here is that we are Atma. So we don't do anything. We don't experience anything. But that's not to say that you know, when we are thirsty, when our body is kind of when we're dying for a drink, and then we say, oh, we don't say, oh, we are Atma and we're just a witness. We are, but then we also need to recognize our duties towards our body. We recognize our needs of our body, but then know that it is different from us. So it is not saying that the body doesn't exist, because it does, right? We all know it does, and there is no. So sometimes when some people who don't really understand this and they've heard little bits, what they say is that this philosophy says that this body is not real. It's not what it's saying. Of course it is real, because you can touch it. There's nothing more real than that at the moment, you know, relatively speaking. You know, and also when I do this, I can feel this. So obviously it exists. But what we mean is that it is temporary, and it is not it is not always there. So for something to be real, for something to be the absolute reality, it has to be there and unchanged all the time. And that's not what our body is. Okay, so I'm not saying that the body doesn't exist, but I'm saying that the body is not always there. So the other thing is, okay, I'll come back to these points a little bit later. So now where we are going to here, where this is leading us to, is saying that the difference between cause and effect is that once you take out the effect from the cause, there is only the cause that's left. So when we take us and, well, consciousness and the body and the Atma, and then when we take out the cause from this effect, then there is nothing that is left. And another example is an example that is very often used in this philosophy is about a clay pot. So a clay, we all know what clay is. So when you see a pot, probably got something here. Can't find one right now, or maybe. So this is okay. This is a clay pot, but it's got a bit of paint on it. So this is in the shape of a pot of a lamp, but it is actually made of clay, right? So what happened is before that was clay, and then if I break it up, it becomes clay. But at the moment, there is a pot. Okay, so similarly, if we take that form, so this lamp, once we take the form of lamp away from it, all that is left is clay, which is its true nature. Okay, so similarly, if we have a gold ring, okay, so this is a ring, And if we take the ring out, what we are left with is gold. Okay, so that's so in between there is this ring, this shape, but then its true nature or its essence is actually gold. So that's what we're saying. So what we refer to as this in the philosophy is we use this word mithya. And again, mithya is, there is no translation for this word, and I would encourage you to just not use any translation, because it kind of causes very serious misinterpretation of what we're saying. So sometimes people translate it as illusion, but that's not correct, because it's not an illusion. I mean, we're not all going mad. We can all see a ring here. Okay, so I'm not saying this is an illusion. All we're saying is that it does not have an independent, is that this ring doesn't have an independent existence without the gold. So if the gold is gone, then there is no ring. Okay, similarly with this lamp, when the clay is gone, there is no pot. Okay, so that's all we mean. And sometimes we use the word Maya and Nitya. They kind of refer to the same concept, but we use them slightly differently. But that's okay. We don't need to go into that kind of detail. So what we're trying to say here is that Brahman, or consciousness, has got an independent existence, does not depend on anything. But Maya, which is the projection of the world, the projection of everything that we experience, has a dependent existence, and it only exists because of consciousness. So there's no consciousness, it doesn't exist. Okay, so that's what we are saying. And also the bit that the other thing that we say is that in different kind of philosophy here, we say that the universe, the universal father, or sometimes we use the word Purusha, so that's Brahman, and then we refer to the manifestation of the world as Maya, or the mother. And what happens is we looked at this idea of gunas before. So the three gunas were, or the qualities, were sattva, rajas, and tamas, which we looked at. So when something has manifested, then it has got qualities, and this is how we experience them. It is the same. It is the same in when this idea of deities, when we are looking at deities. So in Hinduism, as you would have realized by now, there are loads of gods and goddesses, and these are all the manifestation of Brahman, but with different qualities, in different shapes and different names and different forms. But really, essentially, there is this one consciousness, and there is this one God that we all are. So that's what the teaching really is, and that's what this philosophy is all about. Okay, so now let's say that you kind of agree with what I'm saying at a level and say, yeah, okay, so this kind of makes sense, but then what I experience is something completely different. Oops, sorry. So why do I not see this reality? So this absolute reality is what we're talking about, is that we are, the mind projects this world is projected, but then once we really know who we are, we just know that we are this witness, we are this consciousness, and we are God. Basically, this is what we are trying to say we are. But we do not see this absolute reality. We see this relative reality in which we're living, which is our reality, and it's what is happening now. So why is it that we do not see that reality? Is because of our conditioning. So we've been conditioned to think of us as this body, as this mind, as the interaction with the world as we are. And what spirituality really is, it is allowing us to move from this object to the subject, to really discover who our real nature is. And to discover our real nature, there are a few things here. So there is, first of all, the stage of intellectually understanding this. So we need to kind of understand what I'm trying to say at an intellectual level and kind of make sense. I mean, obviously, at the beginning, there'll be lots of questions, there'll be a lot of doubts, which is absolutely fine. And you need to clarify those, you need to question those and not accept anything that I'm telling you without understanding it. But then there is the other step is actually experiencing it. So the self-realization actually that I was talking about at the beginning comes when we have assimilated this knowledge and we experience this knowledge. So by experiencing this knowledge, then what do we do? So at this level, we no longer see the pot, but we see the clay. Or another way of looking at it is that, you know, there is this story about a sugar crystal asking this sage, but, you know, when will I become sweet? And then the sage responds, but you are already sweet. The problem is you just don't know it. So that's exactly where we are, is that we are already this consciousness, we are already this immortal being, but we just don't know it. And so to be able to see that, I mean, this is what sometimes is called as ignorance in this context. And ignorance here means that we don't really know who we are. We don't know our real nature, our true nature. So so therefore, to be able to, I mean, there are various levels. So first of all, to be able to even intellectually appreciate this, we need to have a pure mind, a pure body, to allow this knowledge to come to us. So you would see that a lot of us who are very, very connected to the outside world, there is no space to kind of take this knowledge in. So, and that's fine. I mean, everybody is at where they are, and that's okay. But for people who want to know this knowledge or who are interested in this kind of knowledge, and to be able to get this knowledge, we need to purify the mind. And so this is where reciting mantras and living by the yamas and the niyamas and all these which help to purify the mind will help us to actually even understand this knowledge. And when that happens, then we can experience that. Sorry, there's a typo there. So what we want to be is that we want to be this pure crystal that can actually project exactly what we are and not take the light of others. Okay, so the crystal is transparent, the crystal is there pure. But then if you put a red background to a crystal, the crystal absorbs that color. So this is what we're doing. We're absorbing whatever is around us. But then what we need to do is get rid of that red background so that we then are reflecting that pure consciousness. So this is what I wanted to talk about today, and we will kind of discuss it after this, and we'll also discuss this next week. But for now, this is where I'm going to end, and we're just going to do our ending prayer. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.